The best of Money Matters. The Big Story.
Welcome to The Big Story. I'm Hongbin Jeong. A rough day for Dr Anjani Sinha, Donald Trump's ambassador nominee to Singapore. Dr Sinha struggled with his responses during a Senate confirmation hearing. He faced a grilling that exposed not just gaps in preparation, but deeper questions about competence, credibility, and the cost of political loyalty. The 2-hour-long hearing on July 9th kicked off soberly with an opening statement by Dr Sinha, but turned into a testy back and forth with Democratic Senator Tammy Duckworth when it came to question time. Let's take a listen of how that went down.
Dr. Sinha, I need to know that you understand some basic facts about Singapore and its critical relationship with the United States. How large was the U.S.'s trade surplus with Singapore in 2024?
$80 billion. $18 billion.
2.8. You're off by a huge factor. Do you support increasing a tariff on Singapore, seeing how they buy more of our stuff than we buy of theirs?
So, Senator...
So you want to put a tariff on them?
Thank you for your question, Senator. You know that President has only done 10% of trade increase with the Singapore, and he's open to dialogue even for that.
Do you agree with that 10% increase with Singapore?
Well,
Yes or no? Do you support the president's plan to put a 10% tariff on Singapore?
I mean, Senator, thank you for your question, but I believe in president's decision of a free trade with any nations in the world, and he's resetting the trade numbers with each country, and he's open for discussion and dialogue with each country.
So you would like to have free trade with Singapore? That's what you would push for as ambassador?
Well, we always had free trade with the Singapore since 2004.
So do you support the 10% tariff increase?
The dialogue is not yet closed. The door is not closed.
Let's go on to the next thing. What year is Singapore next scheduled to be the ASEAN chair?
This year is Malaysia.
I didn't ask you about this year. When is Singapore going to be the ASEAN chair?
I don't know when, but this year...
2027. Please, I'm trying to help you here, but you've not even done your homework, sir. You want to be ambassador to Singapore, one of the most important friends we have in the Indo-Pacific, a key place that we're going to be fighting against our greatest adversary in the region, the PRC. I just feel that you are not taking this seriously, and you think this is a glamour posting, that you're going to live a nice life in Singapore. But what we need is someone who's going to actually do the work. I'm out of time, but I want to reinforce again for you right now. You are not currently prepared for this posting, period, and you need to shape up and do some homework.
Now, that's just a glimpse of what happened in the confirmation hearing. No second hearing has been scheduled, though, but the fallout is already making waves. So the biggest question is, was this just a bad performance or a symptom of something much bigger in America's diplomatic playbook? What happens now to Dr. Sinha? Does he still have a chance to be confirmed as the next ambassador to Singapore? Well, joining us today to delve into this deeper is Dr. Jessica Genauer, Senior Lecturer in International Relations at the College of Business, Government and Law at Flinders University. Hi, Dr. Genauer. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me on the program.
All right. Well, what was your initial reaction to watching that hearing? Was Dr. Sinha simply having a bad day or something more troubling about how ambassadors are chosen?
So I guess I had a few initial reactions. First of all, it wasn't very pleasant to watch. Just on a basic human level, there was an element of cringe there in watching the way that those questions were asked of Dr. Sinha and his inability to answer them. I think it does indicate something a little troubling in the way that within the US context, the presidential appointees for ambassador can essentially be a political appointee. So it's not required that they have a long history in working in diplomatic affairs, in foreign relations. They can essentially be someone who the president, in this case Trump, has picked for quite other reasons. And I think that that is probably what was coming to light in the hearing today in this particular case.
Well, for some context here, Dr. Genauer, how do hearings like this shape actual foreign policy, if at all? Is this more about signaling than substance?
So it is about signaling, but at the same time, it is also important. So what we're seeing here is that the Senator Tammy Duckworth, who was questioning Dr. Sinha, was really trying to make a broader point about the competency and capability of current US ambassadors. So she probably knew that this wasn't going to ultimately change the outcome or necessarily change US foreign policy in practice, but it does put a spotlight on the fact that there may be a lower level of competency than would actually be required of, for example, a US ambassador to a very important Southeast Asian nation like Singapore.
Well, have previous confirmation hearings been as heated as this one?
Well, actually, yes, they have. So it's interesting how the confirmation process has almost become an arena in which political actors who want to air a particular opinion or show some kind of resistance to the person being nominated for whatever reason will do that often in quite an antagonistic way in these Senate hearings. And that's definitely what we saw again today. So there is an element of the performative to this whole process in that there are political actors who want to raise certain points, not necessarily expecting to impact the outcome.
Well, I mean, this hearing started off polite, but quickly turned heated, especially when Senator Tammy Duckworth grilled him on trade figures, tariffs, and his overall readiness for the job. So, Dr. Genauer, to what extent was Senator Duckworth's grilling of Dr. Sinha about competence, and to what extent was it political theater?
So I actually think that it was both. I think that Senator Tammy Duckworth is, quite reasonably, genuinely concerned about the level of knowledge of Dr. Sinha about Singapore itself, which is obviously the country where he's going to be representing the US as ambassador. I think she was concerned about appointees that seem to be more political and maybe don't have that kind of deep expertise that you need to engage in serious diplomatic relations. At the same time, I think that Senator Tammy Duckworth was very well aware that this would catch media attention, that this would be a kind of a moment that would likely be broadcast around the world, and so was trying to raise her own profile as a political actor at the same time.
Well, Dr. Sinha struggled under pressure, missing basic facts like the size of the U.S. trade surplus with Singapore and when Singapore will take the ASEAN chairmanship. How will Singapore, you think, be viewing Dr. Sinha given his performance at the hearing?
So I don't think that people in Singapore will be very pleased with this performance, in the sense that even if someone is a political appointee, they can still brush up on some basic facts about the country where they are expected to be stationed. So I would say that the view from within Singapore would be that Dr. Sinha is in some ways indicating that whilst he might be very pleased to be the US ambassador to Singapore and he might take that role seriously, he's not actually putting the required focus and attention on Singapore itself that is needed to fulfill the role.
What's the risk of backlash from Singapore then, either diplomatically or behind closed doors?
Well, I think that there won't be any overt backlash just because countries don't tend to get involved in other countries' nomination processes, because that's something that's under the sovereignty of a particular nation state. So I don't think that Singapore would say anything directly and publicly, criticizing the US's own kind of internal processes of nomination for a US, an US ambassador to Singapore. But I do think that if he ultimately is confirmed as the US ambassador, that there will be, people who will have to work with him will understand that potentially this person is coming in without a lot of prior knowledge and without a sort of deep understanding of the Singaporean economic, political, and ultimately cultural context as well.
Could this affect the strength of U.S.-Singapore relations as well, especially in areas like defense cooperation and trade?
I think that U.S.-Singapore relations are stronger and broader and more long-lasting than any one US ambassador to Singapore and their particular level of competency. So I don't see that ultimately, unless, he's sort of confirmed as US ambassador and then makes some sort of shaky or, undesirable decisions once in the position, I don't really see this fundamentally affecting the quite strong and deep defence and trade relations that already exist between the US and Singapore.
Senator Duckworth even accused him of not doing his homework and of seeing the posting as a glamorous assignment. So how do you interpret the Trump administration's choice to nominate someone with no prior diplomatic experience to a key strategic ally like Singapore?
The little that we do know about Dr. Sinha is that Trump apparently perceives him to have quite good business expertise. And this is often something that Trump admires and obviously sees that, trade between the US and Singapore is obviously very important. And so I think somehow Trump might translate the fact that Dr. Sinha has personal business acumen into him being competent at managing, very important economic relations between the US and Singapore. We also know that he apparently plays golf with Trump and has been quite a good friend of Trump's for at least a decade. So looking at things that are more of a political appointment, it's entirely possible that those close and warm personal relationships have played into this appointment as well.
Well, given the global attention this hearing has gotten, is this a big blow to Dr. Sinha?
I do think that it is, because it will influence the perception of his own competency. And going in as an ambassador to another country, you really need to be able to come in and command respect from people within the country. And I think that this hearing would have greatly damaged that level of just prior existing respect, and that Dr. Sinha would need to now build that up and really show that he does care about Singapore and that he is interested and does have that deep knowledge of Singapore once, if he were to be present in the country, then once he actually arrives.
Right. Despite Dr. Sinha's poor performance there, his nomination is not completely doomed. He still needs a committee vote and then a full Senate vote. Now, the nomination requires a simple majority to be confirmed in the 100-member Senate, where the Republicans have 53 senators. So how likely is he going to be appointed to be the ambassador to Singapore, or could he be replaced?
I think it's actually quite likely that he will be appointed, and that's because what we've seen, particularly in Trump's second term as president, that politics in the United States is becoming increasingly partisan. So it's almost like if someone is Trump's appointee or Trump's pick for a particular position, then more likely than not, all of those Republican senators are going to vote for him. It's not so much going to be based on evaluating his specific level of competence for the position. And then also because the senator that really raised those concerns is a Democratic senator. So even more so, there are going to be many senators who are going to view this through a partisan lens rather than a competency lens. And I do think that it's quite likely that he will end up being confirmed in the position.
But if Dr. Sinha is confirmed despite this performance, what precedent does that set for diplomatic standards moving forward?
Well, it's not great. And, honestly, we saw this as well in Trump's first administration, and we're seeing it again to some extent in the second administration, that there does seem to be less emphasis on people who really have many years of long-standing experience in understanding how to build diplomatic and foreign relations and all of the nuances to the challenges that are involved, in particular maintaining those relationships over the medium to long term. So I do think in some ways this is a trajectory that we're already on, but I think that it is very concerning for how the US is going to engage in diplomacy in the Southeast Asian region and what that says about, will there be a focus on actually building relationships, building ties, or is it more about appointing people who Trump feels are close to him personally and might be willing to pursue any sort of, policies or lines of foreign diplomacy that he himself suggests without contest?
Could this appointment also shift perceptions of U.S. credibility in ASEAN?
Yes, I think that it could in many ways because, again, it's emphasising that really Donald Trump, as a president in his second term, seems to be more concerned about personal loyalty and allegiance than he is about signalling to the region, the Southeast Asian region, to countries in the region, we understand you and we care about what is important to you.
Well, then what happens next? Will we see another follow-up hearing? Does Dr. Sinha still have a chance to come back from all of this?
So I actually do think that we're unlikely to see another hearing and that despite the event today, which was quite dramatic, most likely we will actually see Dr. Sinha approved as the US ambassador to Singapore, and then it will be up to, I guess, Dr. Sinha himself to then prove that he's actually worthy of that position.
Well, thank you so much for that analysis. Thank you so much for joining me, Dr. Genauer.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. That was Dr. Jessica Genauer, Senior Lecturer in International Relations at the College of Business, Government and Law at Flinders University. This has been The Big Story with me, Hongbin Jeong.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.